Story 1. We've got a good group of friends, and we camp together every year for Labor Day. There are 7 adults, 4 kids, and 3 cars. We pay extra for the third car and are under the per-person maximum allowed per site. Reservations open 11 months in advance, and we always book the same large site 11 months ahead. This is, without question, the best site in the entire campground. It has a pull-through for the camper. It's set apart by itself. It has a huge amount of space. It's tucked away from the road, and it faces the woods. It's in a plus site. Some of the sites are much smaller in comparison. I was the first to arrive at the campground at about 9 p.m. Friday night. Every site was full, except for one, and it wasn't ours. It was the site right next to ours, and it was clearly a spot that could not fit a 32-foot trailer. We were out in the middle of nowhere, what I jokingly called Methlahoma, and this trailer looked like it was probably made in the 1980s. So, I was a little nervous as I went up to knock on the door. I immediately slipped into my best Oklahoma accent and went full Southern lady. "I'm terribly sorry to bother y'all, but here's my reservation email, and I think y'all are in my site." They responded, "Oh, no, this is the site we booked." I politely asked, "Well, ma'am, would y'all mind if I looked at your reservation email? If they double-booked us, we'll figure it out." They said, "Oh, let us find the email." They closed the door, and I waited 10 minutes. Nobody came back out. At that point, I went ahead and called the ranger, who said they would be there in 30 minutes. I waited 10 more minutes and knocked on their door again. "Were y'all able to find that email?" They replied, "Well, do we go to their website?" I explained, "No, it should be in your email." Then they asked, "Well, what do you want us to do? We have kids asleep in here." I said, "Ma'am, my kids are asleep in the car, so I get it. But we won't fit into that other site. If we can't get into this one, we won't have a space to sleep tonight." They still couldn't find the email. My friend finally pulled up with their trailer, and the ranger arrived right afterward. Magically, the other campers somehow found the email. It turned out they were supposed to be in the tiny site, not ours. They immediately began appealing to the ranger. They said, "Oh, we're supposed to leave tomorrow morning. Can't we just stay here? It's so much work to back in a trailer for just one night." Okay, I tried to compromise. "All right, we'll find somewhere else tonight if you can be out by 7 a.m. tomorrow so that we can get set up." They countered, "How about 11? That's checkout time." I shook my head. "Nope. This is our site. We'll be kind, but we've got a full day tomorrow and we need to be set up by 8 a.m. They grumbled, "That's so early. We have kids, but I guess we can be out by then." The ranger, who clearly saw the potential drama that could happen at 7 a.m. the next morning, stepped in firmly. "No, you need to go ahead and move tonight." They protested, "But we have sleeping kids." The ranger pointed toward me. "So does she. You need to move." There was a lot of muttering and grumbling, but eventually they began moving their camper. It took them a solid 45 minutes to get that large trailer squeezed into the tiny site they had actually booked. And here we are, Sunday afternoon, with their loud kids and their off-leash little dogs still occupying the site next door. Thankfully, the sites are fairly well spaced, so at least the noise is muted somewhat by the trees. Still, it's hard not to notice. Yesterday morning, one of their kids screamed, "Mom, why aren't we in the nice site anymore?" The mom shouted back, "Well, those people over there took our site." I couldn't help but think, should have booked earlier, my friends. Normally, when we camp, we cook more food than we can eat and share it with our neighbors. Not this time. No steak for them. Story 2. I was a deputy sheriff for 12 years, 7 of which were spent in the courts. By the time this incident happened, I had been promoted to the position of chief of the court division. At first, I reported directly to a captain who was the chief of operations of the sheriff's office. He and I got along great, but then he moved on to greener pastures. Then I was informed I'd be reporting to a lieutenant who who was the chief of the detective division. The lieutenant and I did not get along at all, and still to this day, almost 10 years since I retired, I utterly loathe him. One day, he decided to pay a visit to the checkpoint where my operations desk was located. He left and came back about 20 minutes later with a write-up he expected me to sign. The reason I wasn't wearing the standard black clip-on tie the division I was in charge of was supposed to wear. I told him I wouldn't wear their clip-on ties. He told me I had to, as our department policy required clip-on ties for safety, so people could not use our ties as a ligature to choke us to death. Several weeks before the encounter, I had purchased 4 or 5 regular ties, all in paisley prints, tied them into perfect length ties with a double Windsor knot and a perfect crease coming out from just below the knot. Then I made a major modification to the ties. It just so happened I was wearing one of them as he made a jerk of himself. As he stood there trying to get me to take and sign the write-up, I told him I refused and requested an appeal to the sheriff. It was the first time I opted a direct appeal for the sheriff to decide. He had me sit in the hall as he went to talk to the sheriff, surely to set me up for failure. Then I was asked to enter. I sat down, and the lieutenant demanded I explain why I would not follow the black clip-on tie policy. The policy existed for safety, so people could not use our ties as a ligature to choke us to death. I knew what the policy said because I wrote it. When the sheriff was first elected, he asked each division chief to write up their own policies and procedures. My predecessor had made some minor changes to the policies for people in my division, but I thought they were too restrictive and needed some changes to inspire creativity. I rewrote the policies for my division, and they were approved by the sheriff. I sat down and removed my tie clip located about halfway down my tie, then pulled on my tie, which easily detached. See, after I bought them, I put them on one by one and tied them so they had the perfect length and knot on the tie. I added an extra 2 inches to the neck size, cut the tie in half, and sewed in Velcro, which would easily become hidden at the back of the neck. The sheriff thought the idea was sound, so he allowed it. I then pointed out a glaring problem which my lieutenant had caused. He made us wear lanyards with our department's initials repeatedly all the way around the lanyard, on which we would clip our agency's employee identification to. The lanyards were pretty wide, about 2/3 of an inch wide, and made of multiple layers, as it could be worn reversibly. My lieutenant spat out. So, at this point, I stood up and pulled as hard as I could on the lanyard, and as I knew would happen, it didn't budge at all, meaning our ties were safe, but the lanyard put us in danger of being choked, as they had no measure for quick release for safety. I didn't get a lot of chances to burn my lieutenant. We really hated each other, but when I did, the burning glare of the sheriff staring at my lieutenant was so worth it. It was a burning glare I'd see shot at my lieutenant several times, and with each one, I prayed our division would be taken from his purview. Just before I was forced into medical retirement, I really had developed 2 debilitating conditions. I got my wish. I got our judges to agree to a change in our uniforms, and without asking permission first, I had the deputies in my division to go to our uniform supplier to get measured. I did this on the premise we needed actual uniforms for special assignments, funerals for fallen officers and soldiers from the area, and most importantly, to help my deputies feel like deputies. I submitted a requisition request for 3 uniforms for each of my employees, and it was approved. This put us under the lieutenant serving as chief of the uniform division. Finally, someone I could actually get along with. I miss the job, but I don't miss my old lieutenant. Justice is a dish best served cold. I've got a few more stories of me absolutely burning my lieutenant. I may submit them as time goes on. Story 3. Station in the United Kingdom, and I had countless occasions where passengers would come up to me asking for advice about their rail travel. I would help where I could, but more often than not, I would direct them to the station staff who were actually responsible for handling these sorts of inquiries, since it was not my job. The information office was literally 10 feet away from the kiosk, clearly posted with a large sign and everything. But, as you are probably aware, People often seem to lack the ability to see and understand signs. I lost count of how many times clueless travelers would wander past the exit multiple times, even though the exit was clearly marked. Most of these stories were fairly unremarkable. However, one evening, a man managed to take foolish behavior to a whole new level. It was late in the evening, and I had about an hour left on my shift. I had already been there for 10 hours by this point, and I was due back the following morning at 5 o'clock, so I was definitely looking forward to finishing for the day. Since it was only a small kiosk, there would often only be one employee on shift. That night, I was alone when a passenger approached me, and the following conversation took place. This was several years ago, so it is not word for word, but rather my best recollection of the encounter. Passenger: Hello. Could you tell me where I need to go to get the train to York? Me: I know you'll need to be on the other side, on platform 2, since platform 1 only has trains bound for London. There should be screens over there displaying departures, as well as station staff who can help you. I don't know exactly which train you'll need or what time it leaves though. Sorry. Passenger: Okay, thanks. I fell asleep on the train and missed my connection. Me: That's unfortunate. Sorry to hear it. Passenger: I know, right? Can I get a latte? Me: Sure. The man then went to the fridge to grab a sandwich, while I began making his drink. At first, I thought it was all fine, just another customer I had helped as best I could, and someone I could serve, which helped make the evening a little less dull. The last hour before closing was usually very quiet. As he browsed the sandwich fridge, a train pulled into platform 2. The man looked up at the train, then looked back at me. Passenger: Is that the train to York? Me: I don't think so. It says Hull on the side, so that's where I believe it's headed. Passenger: Okay. As he handed me his sandwich to heat, he continued: So do you know when the next train to York is? Me: I'm afraid not. You'll have to speak with the station staff. Passenger: Why can't you help me? Me: Because I work for a coffee shop. I haven't memorized the train schedule. Sorry. Passenger: Are you sure you can't help me? I should have arrived by now, and I really don't want to have to wait for a couple more hours. Me: Sorry, I don't know. Like I said, the station staff can help you out. By this point, the man had paid and received his latte, but his sandwich was still heating. We had an old panini grill, and it easily took 4 to 5 minutes before the food would be ready. So, we had entered that slightly awkward stage of waiting. Nothing much happened for a couple of minutes, and then he spoke again. Passenger: How did you get here? Me: I drove. Passenger: Would you give me a lift? At this point, I should mention that the journey from where I lived and worked to York was easily a 2-hour drive one way. There was absolutely no way I was going to drive 4 hours, especially when I had to get up at 4 o'clock the next morning for work. Me: No. Passenger: Why not? He looked genuinely shocked that I had said no. Me: Because I'm not a taxi service, I'm a barista. If you can't wait for your train, there are taxis outside that can take you. Passenger: Why can't you do it? Me: Because I'm a barista, and I need to get to bed if I want to have a decent amount of sleep tonight. Passenger: I still don't see why you can't. It was at that exact moment that the timer on the grill went off. I quickly said, "One moment," to the man while I placed his panini into a cardboard sleeve and handed it to him with some napkins. This seemed to finally snap him out of his daze. He thanked me, wandered off toward platform 2, and that was the end of the encounter. Sorry, it isn't the most dramatic ending, but it completely mystified me how he couldn't seem to understand what I was telling him, and how he thought it was reasonable to expect me to drive him to York. I figured I'd follow his example someday. The next time I went to a coffee chain like Starbucks, I'd ask for a mocha and a ride to London. After all, isn't that just the job of a barista? Story 4. So, my dad and I, though mostly me, are really into paintball. I had just gotten a Geo4 marker and a new freak kit for my birthday, and I like to be comfortable when I'm playing. That means I don't like wearing heavy winter clothing during games. My dad and I agreed we should just wait for spring to roll around, which is now. The cast: entitled Mother, entitled Kid 1, entitled Kid 2, Sweet Dad, me, my dad. My dad was entering the pro shop when the entitled mother came up to me and asked if I would go easy on her kids. I said sure, because I could tell they were younger than me and clearly new to paintball. My dad and I began filling up our pods and hoppers so we could head down to the field, but the entitled mother came back over to us and asked if we could give her kids some paint. Entitled Mother: could we have a case or two of your paint, please? Me: sorry, ma'am, but my dad and I are planning to use all of our cases of paint. Sweet Dad: Ginny, we should be fine. We can always buy more if we need any. The entitled mother complained, but they have so much paint. They aren't going to use all of it. Now, may I remind you that my dad and I are very dedicated to paintball, so we usually get 6 cases of paint to last us the whole day. Dad: if we have any left over at the end of the day, we will give the rest to you. The entitled mother snarled at us in disgust. About an hour and 30 minutes later, my dad and I ended up on the opposite team from the family. Now, call me petty, but I wanted to take out the mom in a way that was disrespectful yet still within sportsmanlike conduct. At this particular paintball park, bunkering shooting someone up close was allowed, and I planned to make use of that rule. As I was playing, entitled Kid 1 and entitled Kid 2 weren't calling their hits and kept wiping off paint marks. I got frustrated and aimed for the hand, since getting hit there is one of those spots that hurts the most, along with the neck, the eye, and the more sensitive areas of the body. Entitled Kid 1 started crying, and a referee took him out of the match. The mom was furious. She began walking toward me, and as soon as she got within 20 feet, I popped 3 shots into her leg and 1 on her mask. The referee pulled her out of the match, and the game ended. As we entered the safe zone, entitled Kid 2 picked up my Geo2 marker and started pretending to shoot people with it. I immediately snatched it away from him and told him never to point markers at anyone outside of play. Entitled Kid 2: can I use your gun, please? Me: no. My marker is very important to me and also very expensive. I don't want anything to happen to it. Entitled Kid 2 yelled, I want to use the gun now. Sweet Dad: Chad, not his real name, let's go over there and look at the other matches. Entitled Kid 2 shouted, no, I want to use the gun. Entitled Mother: why won't you let him use it? Dad: I just got it for him for his birthday. It's brand new and quite expensive. We don't want to risk any damage. The entitled mother scoffed. Oh, come on, our markers only cost $50 each. Yours isn't expensive at all, it's just like the others. The next game was about to start, but I realized entitled Kid 1 had taken my mask. As I chased him around the safe zone, entitled Kid 2 shot me 8 times just under my eye. I turned around and saw the entitled mother actually helping her son shoot me. That's when I lost my patience. Me and my dad: what are you doing? I could have lost an eye, or worse, and you just helped your son do this to me? That's complete nonsense, lady. The 2 kids started to cry, and the entitled mother began crying as well. A referee came over to see what was going on, and the entitled mother immediately tried to play the victim. She claimed I was framing them by rubbing paint on my face to make it look like they had shot me. I swear, the sweet dad gathered all of his strength to finally speak up. He admitted that his wife and son had done it and said he was done with her behavior. The police were called, and my dad and I pressed charges against the entitled mother. And yes, at the end of the day, we kept our word. We gave all of our leftover paint to the sweet dad. Story 5. So this is a story from a few years ago when I used to work in the shipping and receiving department of a large grocery store chain. One of the people I loved working with there, we will call him Bob, had an especially short fuse. Bob had worked in shipping and receiving for about 6 years by this point and hated it and the people that shopped there, and I can't blame him either. I'm telling you all this because I liked Bob, and since I generally was harder to piss off, anytime a customer would wander into the back looking for something or someone, I'd usually be the one to deal with them. No big deal. I really didn't mind it. But one summer's day, it was literally 110 degrees in the back of the truck we were unloading. The manager was yelling at us every 15 minutes to go faster and would retreat back to his air-conditioned office. So as you can imagine, we were all in a bad mood already. All of a sudden, we heard it. The dreaded sound everybody hates hearing. The dreaded, excuse me, coming from a Karen. Now this Karen looked to be around 60-70 years old, dressed extremely well, had a perm. I mean the whole thing. Right as I look at her, I notice that she is carrying a milk jug that's leaking heavily everywhere. So I look at Bob to tell him I got this and to start to walk over to the Karen. I tell her, I'm sorry, but you can't be back here, as this is an employees-only section, and she starts screaming at me and says, well, I wouldn't have come back here if anybody here had any brain cells. I found this milk jug in an aisle unrefrigerated, and I decided that I'm going to bring it back here to do you guys a favor, since none of you can do your jobs. Visibly already done with this, I try to put on my best customer service smile and say, well, we appreciate you bringing it to our attention, but in the future if you could leave it where it is and ask an employee outside of this room to help, we would really appreciate it. Karen looks at me shocked. Like I just told her that she wasn't allowed to do whatever she wanted, and that I was insulting her for doing her good deed. Before I know it, she starts screaming at me that I'm an ungrateful little jerk for not accepting her help, and then does something that shocked everyone. She says, do you want the milk back? And I said, sure. And when I put my hand out to grab it, she throws it at my head. Absolutely shocked that I just got whacked with milk, I stay speechless. Which turns out it didn't matter because before I could even react, here comes Bob. Remember how I said Bob hated this job and had a very short temper? Welp. Guess this was the day where he was just like, screw it, because without saying anything this man comes over, picks up the milk, and throws it back at her with speeds you only see from a quarterback in a playoff game, and then tells her, you dumb witch. Are you actually that stupid? This man was trying to help you out and be nice, and you have the nerve to throw this at him? You tracked half a gallon's worth of milk from where you found it to in here just to be a jerk. Next time you want to do us a favor, just don't, because I don't think you could. Get the heck out of the back of this store and leave us alone. Now, if you thought I was speechless before, you hadn't seen anything till now. I must have looked like a statue. I was almost afraid to move at the risk of getting my own head ripped off. But the lady just turns around and waddles away really fast. I turn around and realize it's not just me that is speechless. All 5 other guys on shift that day are just looking at Bob with their mouths on the floor. I look at Bob and say, I appreciate it, man, but I really hope you didn't go too far. She might try to get you fired. And that's where Bob smiles and says, no, it's fine. There are no cameras back here because the company is cheap as heck, and I got all of you to back me up and say you have no idea what happened. I smiled. The rest of the group smiled. No one said anything. We just all smiled as if we were all mentally agreeing that we wouldn't say anything. As you can imagine, 10 minutes later, here comes at least 10 managers with this old lady in tow right behind them. She begins to say, it was him, he did it. And we all just looked at this lady with a shocked look like we had no idea what was going on. She goes through the whole scene that happened, and we are all just like, what the heck? None of that happened. I step up and say, Bob never even talked to this lady. We have no idea what she is saying. I talked to her. She brought back a milk that was leaking everywhere, and I decided to bite my tongue and still be nice to this lady and take it. I asked her to exit the back of the store because it was an employees-only section, and she left. That was it. That's all that happened. You can check the cameras back here if you don't believe us. My manager looks at me and says, well, we don't have any cameras back here, but regardless they are right. Miss, you aren't supposed to be back here ever. We have lots of signs posted for it on the door. As you can imagine, this lady gets even more irritated, screeching like a banshee to the point no one can understand what she is even saying. My managers eventually just think she must be crazy and escort her out of the store. They give us the whole, just make sure that you try to watch your tone of voice more with customers for future reference talk, but besides that, nothing happened. The woman couldn't prove anything. And we all vouched for Bob, and the managers trusted me. They thought I'd never lie to them, because like I said, I'm usually the nice person who tries to help anyone and everyone. Am I saying that it was right what we did? No, not at all. In retrospect, we probably went too far. But at the time, none of us gave a crap. We were done with Karen and her nonsense. We were already pissed from the heat and our other manager, who was an arrogant jerk. This lady just pushed us over the edge that day. So lady, if you're reading this, we are sorry. But maybe don't throw milk at people and act like a Karen, and you won't get milk thrown back at you. Story 6. Backstory. This happened a few years ago. My parents are the epitome of what makes an entitled parent and have got plenty of stories about their antics. To sum it up quickly, I had decided at 18 years old to run away from them and live overseas, where I am today and quite happy. This was the biggest decision of my life, and I was very nervous. They had done terrible stuff since my childhood, and I needed to get away for my own safety and well-being. I planned the flight about 2 weeks before the date, and my parents the whole time didn't think I'd go through with it. To be fair, they only thought I was going on vacation for a short bit. Came the day, and after me calling an Uber to take me to the airport, they caved to save face and took me themselves. I checked in and did all that good stuff before I had to go through security. I waved them off and began to walk forward, until the following went down. Security, excuse me. Where is your boarding pass? I only see one here. He points at my boarding pass. Entitled mother. Oh, don't worry. We're just going to take our daughter to the gate. No. I'm afraid you can't go past this post without a boarding pass. What? But she's our daughter. You can't tell me what I can and can't do with my own daughter. Security guy sighs and looks at a flustered me up and down. I have a baby face and have always looked much younger than I really am. All right, how old is she? Well, she's me. I'm 18, sir. She glares at me and shushes me. Well, she is an adult and does not require accompaniment from her parents. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave. But she does. She's not mentally 18. She's mentally regressed and has issues. I was so shocked and embarrassed. I had depression brought on by diagnosed PTSD. Those were my issues. Yet, she worded it to make it sound like I was intellectually disabled. What? Entitled dad. She's mentally a child. She still likes Chinese cartoons. Referring to anime and manga. I don't see how that applies here. She seems capable enough. Do you feel you can go through on your own? Yes, I'm okay. Ugh, liar. She begins stomping her foot in frustration like a toddler. Just let me through right now with my daughter. Yeah, and me. The security sighs and calls another security officer over. Security man 2, what seems to be the problem? Entitled mom, cutting them both off. This jerk won't let me go through to the gate with my daughter, who is mentally slur. Security man #2, the real story, please. Security man #1 explains the deal, and my entitled parents are fuming. They can tell by the looks on their faces they're not going to get their way. Finally, my mom yells out the famously awaited Karen line. I know my rights. I demand to speak to your manager. So another person comes over and the three of them are talking quietly together. Me, mom, dad. This is going too far. I'm going to miss my flight if this keeps going. And whose fault is that? You should have booked a later flight. My flight is at 11 at night. Not my problem. If you miss your flight, that is on you. Finally, they stop talking and approach us. Supervisor, hi, I think we can make a compromise. I'm not supposed to do this, but I'll allow one of you through with her to have a meal or just sit with her for a bit. I could really get in trouble doing this, but I know how far she's going and know it'll be hard. Entitled mother reads her title on her name tag. I asked for a manager. Man. Entitled dad. This is pathetic. Your proposal is also pathetic. How are you going to break up a nice family like that? Me? I really will be fine. I'll catch up with you next time, okay? Supervisor. I understand where you are coming from, but she seems more than capable and is an adult. I am breaking the rules by letting even one of you go through without a ticket, but it is my offer. No. This is ridiculousness. By now, entitled mom is stamping around and waving her arms around. She gets up close to the two security who kinda eye her, and she immediately backs away, but doesn't stop stamping. Ma'am, I'm afraid if you don't stop, I'm going to have to escort all of you away. Me, realizing he means me too, I quietly mutter an "oh no" under my breath and begin to panic a bit. Fine, we'll just take our daughter home then. She takes my arm, but I quickly pull away. Stop. Dad, how dare you? Apologize to your mother. The supervisor looks at me and says, vertical bar, would you like a parent to go with you? No, not really. Parents, what? Supervisor, okay, please come along then. No, I demand you let us on her flight with all the problems you've caused. Yeah, and make it first class, or any upgrades. You didn't get the manager, you got a supervisor. You lied to me? Manager. The supervisor just ignores them and turns to me. May I double-check your ticket? Yeah, of course. I show her my ticket. Perfect. 1 boarding pass for 1 person. Step this way and enjoy your flight. Thank you. My entitled mother grabs my arm. No, okay, one of us will go through. Hey, you like Wendy's, right? Let's get Wendy's through there. I removed my arm. No thank you. I grab my suitcase and walk through security. My entitled parents try to follow and are immediately stopped. This is not the service we pay for. We should be allowed a ticket on the flight for this. Wendy's, baby. Wendy's, come on, Wendy's. Wendy's. I don't look back, and now I'm further away. I can no longer hear them over the line of people I am in. I got my flight just fine and arrived in one piece. I cut contact with both of them. Legend has it, my entitled mom is still screaming, Wendy's, to this day.